Thanks, Henrik. Just let me know if you can hear me well.
Yeah, all is good.
Okay, good. So first of all, sorry that I cannot be there in person today, but as Henrik said, I will be there tomorrow. And before I start my presentation, I think Henrik gave a bit of a challenge there in the beginning, citing the new regulatory proposal. From one of the most difficult part is where how we link the kind of like personalized health data, the primary and the secondary use cases in the Article 34. So that's probably something that we will have a puzzle today of solving. Anyway, let's move on with the slides. So my title today is Towards European Health Data Space. It's also the name of the project that I coordinate. And next slide, please. My presentation today comes in two parts. So first a bit about European data policies and the European Health Data Space. And I built the landscape for the proposal that was given on May this year. I will also tell you about the project that I'm coordinating and what we have done so far and what we are going to do in the future. Next slide, please. So I think we need to put the European Health Data Space proposal in a context with the other proposals and regulations coming from the Commission. And I think a good starting point is the 2016 General Data Protection Regulation, which set out the principles for personal data processing in the EU. But after that, there has been many different kinds of proposals that also concerns health. And we call it regulatory tsunami in Finland. And it's quite hard to understand the whole of it. As you can see at the end, you see the European Health Data Space proposal from this year. I think if you take one line from this slide, it is the 2020 data strategy slide, or the line there. And if you read one document, I think that would be a good document to read. It's a couple of years old, but it still gives the big picture of all the proposal that has been handed after that. So if you go to the next slide, the data strategy aims for a common European data space and basically a single market for data. It aims to allow the data to flow in EU within sectors, but also across sectors. It aims for the high availability of high quality data. I think we can talk about data quality today. It aims to set up European rules and values and to set up the processes that respect the European rules and values. And you heard in the last presentations by Ségolène about the rules from the French national perspective. And the proposal for the European data strategy for data aims to create European processes that would be common for all the countries. So moving to the next slide, please. As I said, it should work within the sectors, but also across sectors. And here you can see one slide that puts health into perspective of other sectors. So whenever we discuss the health data space, we should also understand that the data should not be only used within the sector. We need to be able to think, for example, one health perspective, how the health is linked to the environment, how it links to the animal health, and how we can use that data together for the health purposes. But also other purposes, such as traveling, as we learned during the COVID epidemic, that we need to use the health data also when we are traveling for border purposes. So it all needs to work seamlessly. So moving to the next slide, please. So what is the European Health Data Space? When you hear the word or the term for the first time, I think many of you think that it is a one database, and you're terrified because you're afraid that all the health data will be put into the one silo or one database, and that is a misconception. So the European Health Data Space is actually a health-specific ecosystem, different rules, common standards, practices, and infrastructures, and a governance framework. This is one of our topics today. I think the main takeaway from this slide is that they are all in plural. So there's multiple standards, multiple practices, and multiple infrastructures. And as you can see during my presentation, it will definitely not be a centralized solution where data is stored in one location only. But let's move on with the presentation. And next slide, please. This is one slide for the proposal. I don't think this is important for today, but as Enrique was already citing one of the articles, then I need to tell you a bit more about it. So I think the key chapter for today is the chapter 4, articles 33 to 58, and it sets out the processes and organizations, how we're going to manage the secondaries of health data in the future in the European Union. As Enrique said, it will be a regulation, so it will make us to change the way that we are doing things nationally. So what you heard from Segolin in the last presentation, the way the health data hub will function will have to change according to the chapter 4 in this proposal. And this will also concern according to the chapter 4 in this proposal. And this will also concern Finland and other countries which have set up their national health data hubs. In the chapter 6, we will have the European governance for these structures and also for the other chapters. And that's also quite interesting and good reading for anyone who is interested in the data governance. But moving on to the next slide, please. The previous slide was about the regulation, and this is the European Commission slide presenting the same topics in a more graphical way. So the scope of the regulation is the primary side of health data and the secondary side of health data. I will skip the primary part for today, as we are talking about the secondary use of health data. The legislation will set up health data access bodies for each country. So what you heard in the last presentations regarding the health data hub will in the future exist in all European countries. It also sets the purposes for data use and what is forbidden to use the data for, how the data permits will be granted, in what kind of environments the data can be used, and how the identification or the de-identification will be managed. And all these processes, all these new organizations aim that the research and innovation would be easier in Europe in the future, and how we could make better policy decisions based on the health data. And as Segolin said, none of this is easy, and all of these kind of regulations will have difficulties in the implementation phase. But I think it's quite good way that this regulation is now setting up the European processes and the basic principles for that. So moving on to the next slide, please. If you're thinking how this all will be funded, there is quite a lot of funding at the moment available for these kind of purposes. From the Recovery and Resilience Facility, 12 billion for the digital health purposes. For ESDS directly, 800 million from the EU for health funds. So I think it's a quite good source of funding, but I think a lot of the extra funding is needed, especially to improve the national healthcare systems. So moving on to the next slide, please. Let's move on to the TEHDAS joint action. So that was my brief introduction for you for the European health data space, and especially the secondaries of health data. And now next slide, and we move on to the TEHDAS. So what has the joint action towards the European health data space done within the last year and a half? This is a project that aims to help the European Commission and the member states to promote and develop the concept of sharing data in the secondary use. So we started a year and a half ago in February 21, and we will finish next year, summer 2023. We have given the European Commission quite a lot of different ideas and proposals of how to build the European health data space, and a lot of that has taken into a lot of that has been already taken into account in the proposal. The previous speaker comes from the French Health Data Hub, is also participating in this project as a competent authority from France. So moving on to the next slide, please. This is the reason why I'm talking to you about the secondaries of health data. The TEHDAS joint action scope is what you see on the rectangle here. So it is only about the secondaries of health data. It is for the better policy making and research and innovation, and mostly focused on the governance, data quality, and infrastructure side of the European health data space. Not that much on the capacity building and the financing side also. Although we will also touch that topic briefly. So moving to the next slide, please. Here you can see the big picture of the project. So each of these are basically what we call work packages, if you know the European projects, and they are governed or led by different countries. So on the governance side, we have put different kind of options for the European Commission regarding the governance. And we have brought the questions, should there be health-specific governance regarding health data? Why is it necessary? What makes health data specific? And we have also analyzed different kind of mechanisms for governing the health data at the moment in EU. And our main conclusion from that work was that we actually need something more for the European health data space. And in the proposal, you can see that the Europe Health Data Space Board has been proposed by the Commission. On the data quality side, the governance side is the work package is led by Sweden and the Netherlands. The data quality is led by Spain and Denmark, and in there we are looking at the semantic interoperability and the data quality assurance side of the data. So how we could trust the data that we use and how we could make it interoperable. So we are looking into different standards, and for example, the OMOP that was presented in the previous presentation is part of that work. Infrastructure is led by Spain, and there we are looking in what kind of digital infrastructure is actually needed in order to be able to use the data from different member states and how to make it secure. And I will have one slide for that later on the presentation. We have identified how citizens are feeling regarding the health data use. We made a survey this year for more than 3,000 European citizens. And I really like the survey and the findings, because one of the findings was that the more the citizens know about health data and its use, the more they are confident about its use. And the less they know, the more they fear. So the key takeaway from our citizen engagement work is that we should be very open, and we should really be clear of how the data will be used and why. So that really brings confidence among the citizens. We are looking into the novel concept of data altruism, which was introduced in the Data Governance Act. And we have also work regarding sustainability. So how all this should be financed and how to make it sustainable for the long run. So that is basically our project in brief. And I have also now some slides regarding some of our work, so that I will not present all of our findings and outputs. You can go to TEHDAS.eu to find out more. But I have just a couple of slides to show like what kind of results they are. So moving to the next slide, please. This was quite interesting study. We studied what are the barriers for cross-border sharing of health data at the moment. And we gave also options how to overcome those barriers. We identified different scientific papers and different interviews with experts. And from that, we sort of made group of the different barriers. And we found 11 main group of different barriers. And 6 of those groupings were based on legal problems. So I would say that the main hurdle of why it's so difficult to use data from different member states or have a common European project regarding health data are legal fragmentation reasons. And that is why the solution also needs to be a regulation, because you cannot solve legal problems by voluntary efforts. There was also data and semantics related problems. And then the key takeaway also from this slide is that only one of kind of like main problems was infrastructure linked. Many times we think that if we just build the best possible infrastructure and IT systems, we can solve the data related problems. But it's mostly about the processes. It's mostly about the and that makes EU at the moment quite difficult for cross-border use of secondaries of health data. Moving to the next slide, please. I think Seglen quite nicely puts how the French Health Data Hub works. And we have thought that in a more generic level. What should the process be from when the research have the research question on the left-hand side to discover what data is available, how to get the permission to use the data, when you even use the data, what kind of services you need, how the anonymization is done in the middle, and on the right-hand side, how you finish your project and how you publish the results. So we have kind of made that into very structured document to explain what are the different processes. And when I read the proposal, I think a lot of this is also included into different articles on the proposal. Moving to the next slide, please. This is my final slide. So I think I want to finish with saying that even though the overall architecture here is quite messy maybe for you, hard to read perhaps, but I think the key takeaway is that it's a decentralized way of working. So we have different nodes that in the proposal are called health data access bodies, and these health data access bodies are national organizations that manage the health data, manage the permissions, and controls these secure processing environments so that the citizens can trust that their data is used properly, and that there's official supervising how things are functioning, as you saw from the previous presentation. So I think I could go to the last slide, and thank you for your attention, and looking forward to see many of you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Markus, for this incredible presentation. We'll take one question or two, and then I'll invite you. Thank you very much, Vasily. Anyone for questions now? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, a very short question, because in France recently there have been a problem of hacking an hospital, and the data have been released on the darknet. And so do you think this type of accident could affect the trust of the people regarding this health data hub?
Markus, did you hear the question well?
Yes, I did.
Okay, go ahead.
We also have had same problems in Finland, mostly from the primary use of data purposes. So there's EHR systems, and they have been hacked and information leaked. In the secondaries of health data, how the process works is that the researcher requests data set, a small data set for his or her study, and the data is then requested from the source, so from the EHRs or from the registries, and it's then used from the secure environment. So actually, the researcher has never access to the full data set from the source, so the EHR data, but it's also extracted, it's pseudonymized, and it's used in a secure environment. So it's actually quite safe, and if for some very severe reason the secure environment would be compromised, only the data that is assessed or linked to that research would be vulnerable, and that would be in a pseudonymized or anonymized form. So I wouldn't say that the secondaries of health data is the main issue here. I think it's how we secure the data at the source and in the EHRs that is the most vulnerable place at the moment.
The other question? Yeah, go ahead. Zori, over there. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for the great presentation. The national hubs, they will sort of set up the access procedure to the data. And as we have seen with the French data hub, there is kind of a committees that will decide whether a project will get access to data. Is there the challenge perhaps in the future that national data hubs have different policies about decision-making on giving access to data? And could this create kind of an imbalance over Europe about access to data? Are you afraid of that?
Well, I think it's a very good question. I think this European Health Data Space proposal will harmonize the processes of how we get access to the data. But I think your question regarding then is also, of course, the national decision making of which project will be granted the access. The proposal gives some glimpse of hope that there would be uniform or that if the project is approved in one country, it would be also approved in another country. So this kind of mutual recognition purposes. But I think it will not be fully mutually recognized for, I think, this kind of, how to say, moral hazard reasons. So some country would be more loose than one country and then cause problems to the other country. So I think we will still in the proposal, it is still that each country is responsible for their decision making. But I think the question is very good, and I think it cannot be really answered in very, very, very clear way. I don't think we have possibility to avoid that problem fully.
Thank you. One final question. Yeah, go ahead. Where's the mic? Go ahead.
Thank you. So I have a question that for both actually presentations, because I was wondering whether the Health Data Hub or the future European Health Data Space will allow for federated analytics, in the sense that because of all these due concerns about the fact that the data should not leave these secure repositories, will it be possible to really apply high-performance computing, federated analytics, to have algorithms that at the same time can apply the analysis on all the data? I struggle to see how this will be maybe possible, but very difficult.
I'll give Markus and then you. Markus, go ahead, and then I'll pass on to Segalen.
Yes, this will be tested. And if you know the EU Darwin project from the European Medical Agency, it is mostly based on this kind of federated learning queries. And how it will work in the European Health Data Space, it's of course, it cannot work for each use case. We cannot solve every problem by sending federated queries around. In order to work, you need to have very structured data sets. What you heard from the first presentation regarding the OMOP, when you have such a structured data set and you exactly know what you're looking for, then you can use these federated queries, and I think it will improve the data security and all that. But when we are in the beginning of your research, you're not 100% sure how you make your research and how you're going to find answers to your problems, then you need to dig into the data and you need to look and you need to really do the research in a bit different manner. So you really cannot, I think we cannot solve all the problems with the federated learning, although it's a good promise that it will streamline things and make things faster and more secure. And I think the European Health Data Space will also facilitate that process.
So Segalen says it's perfect answer, but I will do a follow-up answer on that, which is to you, is if you felt the need to invite IT experts in the area of cloud analytics to the hub to really increase your capacity.
I'm not sure I got your question really. I think that most of the solutions in the future, and we have not yet discussed the regulatory hurdles that we have, will be solved by IT people, because we have to really answer the question of the citizens about the security of data. You were very right that seeing hacking happening all the time, you know, and all these health data, let's say, leaked out in newspapers, it's a disaster for the perception of the people of what we do, although we know that we are not in the situation where what we do is putting in danger this data because they are pseudo-anonymized data and on a copy of primary sources. So we are not really a danger per se. But it's not like that it is perceived. So I think that we have really to work for better technical solutions to have, let's say, acceptable answers and real answers to the concerns of the people. And I believe that the situation is going to evolve a lot because the technology is evolving all the time, and that we see that perhaps we could, in the future, solve the issue of linking scientific data and real-world data, nominative data, in a way that the researchers never see the real-world data that they have to link. And so this is done in a bank, a very secure bank area where no one sees anything. It is just automatically done, So I'm sure that there are plenty of solutions which are going to come from the IT side of what we do. So.
Thank you very much. So my question was, do you feel you need to hire some of these IT sort of scientists, data scientists?
Yeah. So when I said at the end of my presentation that we have many problems, the problems are also that, it's a field where there are very few experts and good people. So every time that we train someone, they are employed somewhere else with a better salary immediately. So it's a big problem, to keep people in such a field where there is so many demands, there. So certainly that in your experience, personal experience, it's really a big problem. And in France, we were not very good in training so many of the young people. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So with this, thank you, Markus. Go ahead. Don't lose your plane, because everyone's in the room expecting you tomorrow.